The study smelled of old paper and the kind of dust that only comes from books nobody has opened in years. Sunlight cut through the tall windows in sharp angles, landing right on the table where the most important document in 100 years was waiting to be signed. Princess Elara stood near the back wall, watching her father's hand tremble just slightly as he lifted the quill. The treaty was supposed to end everything. The Centennial War. The endless lists of names read aloud in the town square. The mothers who clutched letters they couldn't read because nobody had taught them how. Her eyes drifted to the seal waiting at the bottom of the page. A lion's head, carved in deep red wax, fierce and proud. It was beautiful, really. The kind of thing you'd expect to see in a painting. What caught her attention, though, was her father's thumbnail. It was chewed raw, almost bleeding. The King of Valdris, ruler of 7 provinces, standing there in his finest robes, and he'd been biting his nails like a nervous child before his first horse ride. That's when she knew something was wrong. The foreign prince sat across the table, straight-backed and still. Prince Kael of the Iron Empire. Her future husband. The man she was supposed to love, supposed to build a life with, supposed to give heirs to. He looked maybe 25, with dark hair that curled just past his ears and eyes that didn't blink enough. He'd arrived 3 weeks ago with 50 soldiers and 2 chests of gifts that her mother had oohed and ahed over. Elara hadn't touched any of it. Prince Kael glanced up and caught her staring. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Not anger. Not warmth either. Something else, something she couldn't name. The room was so quiet you could hear the scratch of the quill against parchment. Her father signed his name with a flourish he probably practiced. King Aldrich. Done. Finished. The war was over. Except it wasn't. The boom came from far away, the kind of sound you feel in your chest before your ears catch up. Deep. Heavy. Wrong. It rattled the windows in their frames and sent a crack racing across the glass in the far left panel. Nobody moved for a moment. Then everything moved at once. Guards flooded in from every door, boots loud against the stone floor. Someone grabbed Elara's arm too hard and she felt fingernails dig in. Her mother screamed something from the hallway that Elara couldn't understand. Papers flew off the desk as soldiers pushed past. Through all of it, Elara watched her father's face, and what she saw there terrified her more than any cannon ever could. He wasn't surprised. His shoulders didn't jump at the sound. His eyes didn't widen. He just stood there, quill still in hand, looking at the treaty like it was already trash. Like he knew. Like he'd always known. Another boom. Closer this time. The candles flickered and one fell over, rolling across the floor until someone stomped it out. Prince Kael rose from his chair slowly. No fear on his face. No confusion either. Just that same steady look, like he was watching a play he'd already seen before. "Your father's hope is my empire's grave," he said, quiet enough that only Elara could hear. She didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. But she'd remember those words for the rest of her life, the way you remember the exact sound of the bell that rings before everything changes. Smoke started seeping in through the cracks around the door. Grey and thin at first, then thicker. It smelled like burning wool and something else, something sweet that she didn't want to name. Elara's heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her palms went slick with sweat. The beautiful dress her mother had picked out, the pale blue one with the silver stitching, suddenly felt ridiculous. Who wears something like that to watch their whole world end? A guard grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the back hallway. She stumbled, caught herself, looked back just once. Her father was still standing at the table, still holding the quill, still not surprised. The ink on the treaty wasn't even dry yet. It sat there on the page, wet and shiny in the afternoon light, a promise broken before the words had time to set. The lion-headed seal stared up at her like it knew, like it had always known. Elara ran. She ran because there was nothing else to do. She ran because the smoke was getting thicker and the booms were getting closer, and somewhere behind her, a woman was screaming words she couldn't understand. She ran because the man she was supposed to marry had just spoken 7 words that would haunt her forever. But deep down, In the quiet place where truth lives, she knew. The war never ended. It just changed clothes. And somewhere in that smoky hallway, with her lungs burning and her eyes streaming tears she didn't have time to wipe away, Elara made a promise to herself. If she survived this day, she would never again trust anything that looked too beautiful to be real. Not a treaty. Not a prince. Not even her own father's smile. Because the lion-headed seal on the peace treaty had wept blood-red wax. And nobody else had seemed to notice. What happens next? When the smoke clears and the castle falls, Elara will have to make a choice that changes everything. She'll have to decide who to trust, who to become, and what kind of person she wants to be when the world she knew is nothing but ash behind her. The booms are getting closer now. The smoke is getting thicker. And somewhere in the chaos, a foreign prince is watching her run, wondering if she's brave enough to do what comes next. Most people aren't. But Elara was never most people. The smoke stung Alara's eyes so badly she could barely see where she was running. Her lungs burned with every breath, like she was swallowing fire instead of air. The beautiful hallway she'd walked through just hours ago, the one with the tapestries her great-grandmother had woven, was now just a tunnel of grey. Somewhere to her left, a soldier shouted something she couldn't understand. To her right, glass shattered. Lots of it, all at once, like 1,000 wine glasses hitting the floor at the same moment. Elara's hand found the stone wall and she followed it, fingers scraping against the rough surface. She felt one of her nails bend backward and pain shot up her arm, but she kept moving. Stopping meant dying. Everyone knew that. Behind her, footsteps. Heavy ones. Coming fast. She pressed herself into a small alcove, the kind meant for holding candles that hadn't been lit in 50 years. Her back hit cold stone and she held her breath, even though every cell in her body screamed for air. The footsteps got closer. Louder. Boots on stone, the kind of sound that means business. A man ran past, so close she could have reached out and touched his arm. He wore the colors of the Iron Empire. Red and black. Her enemy. The people who were supposed to be her family now, according to that treaty sitting on the table back there, ink still wet. She waited 5 heartbeats. 10. Then she let herself breathe. That's when she felt it. Someone else's breath, warm against the back of her neck. Elara spun around, fist raised, ready to fight with whatever strength she had left. But the person standing there wasn't a soldier. It was Prince Kael, pressed into the same tiny alcove, his chest heaving, a thin cut across his cheek dripping blood onto his white collar. He looked at her fist. She looked at his face. Neither of them moved. "You're bleeding," she whispered. He touched his cheek, looked at the blood on his fingers like he'd never seen such a thing before. "So are you." She looked down. Her palm was red where the broken nail had torn the skin. She hadn't even noticed. More footsteps. More shouting. This time it was her own people's voices, calling her name. "Princess Elara. Princess Elara, where are you?" She opened her mouth to answer. Kael's hand clamped over it. He shook his head slowly, eyes wide. Warning her. Begging her. She bit down on his finger, hard enough to taste blood. He didn't make a sound. Just held her there, hand over her mouth, while her own guards ran past, missing her by inches. When the footsteps faded, he let go. "What did you do that for?" she hissed. "They would have killed you." "They're my guards. They protect me." He shook his head again, that same slow motion. "Not anymore. Your father surrendered the castle an hour ago. Anyone wearing your colors is either dead or running. Those men weren't protecting you. They were looking for something to trade for their own lives." Elara's stomach dropped. The floor felt uneven suddenly, like the whole world had tilted sideways and forgotten to tell her. "My father wouldn't surrender. Your father signed a treaty he knew would break. He traded you for time. And now he's gone." She wanted to argue. Wanted to scream at him, hit him, make him take it back. But somewhere deep down, in the place that had noticed that chewed thumbnail, she knew it was true. Another explosion. Closer now. The floor shook and a crack ran up the wall beside them. "We have to move," Kael said. "Where?" "I don't know. Away from here. Now." He grabbed her wrist and pulled. She pulled back. For a moment they just stood there, two strangers locked in a tug of war while the world burned around them. "Let go of me." "Or what? You'll die here alone." "I'd rather die alone than trust you." He laughed. Actually laughed. Right there in the middle of everything. "You think I want to be here? You think I wanted any of this? I'm a hostage, remember? Your father's prisoner. The only difference now is that my people are winning and yours are losing. Which means if they find me, they'll take me back. And if they find you, they'll—" He stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. "They'll what?" Kael looked away. "You don't want to know." The smoke was getting thicker now. Elara coughed. Couldn't stop. Her eyes streamed tears that left clean tracks through the soot on her cheeks. "Fine," she said. "We run together. For now. But if you try anything, I'll—" "You'll what? Bite me again." Despite everything, she almost smiled. Almost. They ran. Through hallways Elara had known since childhood, now strange and threatening in the smoke. Past the library where she'd learned to read. Past the kitchen where Cook used to sneak her warm bread with honey. Past the little door that led to the garden where her mother had taught her the names of flowers. All of it covered in smoke. All of it falling apart. They turned a corner and almost ran straight into a group of soldiers. Iron Empire colors. 6 of them, armed and alert. Kael pulled her back so fast she stumbled, hit the wall, felt pain explode in her shoulder. He pressed himself against her, hiding her with his body, and she could feel his heart beating through his back. Fast. Scared. Human. The soldiers kept walking. Didn't see them. When they were gone, Kael turned around. His face was inches from hers. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "You just saved your enemy," he whispered. "Why?" Elara thought about it. Really thought about it. The answer surprised her. "Because you're not my enemy. You're just some guy they dragged here, same as me." Something shifted in his expression. She couldn't name it, but she felt it. A wall coming down. A door opening. "Come on," he said. "I know a way out." "How?" "Because I've been looking for one since the day I got here. Every night. Every hallway. Every locked door. I've mapped this whole place in my head." She should have been scared of that. Should have been terrified that the man she was running with had been planning to escape all along. But instead, she felt something else. Hope. He led her to a tapestry she'd passed 1,000 times, the one with the hunting scene, the horses, and the dogs and the hunters with their bows. Behind it, hidden in the stone, was a door she'd never noticed. Where does it go? The old escape tunnel. The one your grandfather built in case of siege. It leads to the river. My grandfather built that? I never knew. Your father didn't want you to know, in case you ever needed to use it and someone asked the wrong questions. She stared at him. How do you know all this? Because my father did the same thing. Built secret passages. Hid doors. Never told anyone except the person who needed to know. He pulled the door open. Darkness waited beyond. Cold and damp and silent. After you, Princess. Elara looked back one last time. Through the smoke, she could just make out the shape of the hallway, the place that had been her home for 18 years. On her 18th birthday, just 3 months ago, she'd stood in that hallway and blown out candles and wished for adventure. Be careful what you wish for. She stepped into the darkness. Kael followed. The door closed behind them with a sound like the end of the world. And somewhere above, in the castle she'd never see again, the lion-headed seal sat on a table full of broken promises, ink still wet, wax still red, waiting for someone who would never come back to claim it. The tunnel stretched ahead, black and endless. Elara couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. But she could feel Kael's presence behind her, could hear his breathing, could sense that she wasn't alone. For the first time all day, that felt like a good thing. What waited at the end of the tunnel? The river, maybe. Freedom, possibly. Danger, definitely. But also something else. Something Elara couldn't name yet. A beginning. Sometimes the only way out is through. And sometimes the only person who can help you find the light is the one who's been living in the dark just as long as you have. 17 days. That's how long they'd been running. 17 days of sleeping in ditches and eating berries that left Elara's stomach cramping for hours. 17 days of jumping at every sound, of walking until her feet bled through the rag she'd wrapped around them, of saying almost nothing because words took energy they didn't have. The barn sat at the edge of a frozen field, miles from any village she could name. Its roof sagged in the middle like an old horse too tired to stand straight. The wood was grey with age, splintered in places, but it kept the wind out. Mostly. Elara pushed the door open and stumbled inside. The smell hit her first. Hay, old and musty. Animal droppings from years ago. Something dead in the corner, small enough to ignore. Her legs gave out before she could take 3 steps and she collapsed onto the dirt floor, not caring anymore what crawled around her in the dark. Behind her, Kael didn't make it much further. He made it to the haystack, the one in the corner farthest from the smell, and slid down it like his bones had turned to water. His face was grey. Not pale. Grey. The colour of river stones. The colour of death. Elara noticed because she'd been watching him for 17 days. Watching the way he always walked slightly ahead of her, taking the first step into every dangerous place. Watching the way he saved half his food for her even when she wasn't looking. Watching the way he'd stopped talking somewhere around day 10, when the fever first started. She crawled over to him. Her knees screamed. Her hands left trails in the dirt. Let me see it. He didn't argue. Didn't have the strength. He just rolled up the bottom of his pants leg, the left one, and showed her what they'd both been trying to ignore. The wound ran from his knee halfway to his ankle. A gash, deep and ugly, from when they'd climbed that fence 3 days ago and the loose board had swung back and caught him. At the time, he'd said it was nothing. At the time, she'd believed him because she needed to. It wasn't nothing. The skin around it had turned colors that didn't belong on a human. Purple at the edges, yellow further out, and in the center, a red so dark it was almost black. Swollen. Hot to the touch. Pus leaking from the corners, thin and yellow and smelling like the thing dead in the corner of the barn. Elara's stomach turned. She swallowed hard and kept her face still. We need to clean it, she said. With what? I don't know yet. Wait here. He laughed at that. A weak sound, barely there. Where would I go? She found a bucket in the corner, rusted but whole. Outside, there was a pump. She'd seen it when they walked up, an old iron thing with a handle that probably hadn't worked in years. It didn't. She pumped and nothing came out but a sound like a dying animal. The stream was further than she wanted to walk. 1/4 mile maybe. Through frozen grass that cut her bare feet. Past trees that could hide anyone, anything. But she went anyway. Because staying meant watching him die, and she wasn't ready for that. The water was so cold it burned. She filled the bucket, carried it back, spilled half, filled it again. By the time she made it to the barn, her hands were blue and she couldn't feel her fingers. She cleaned the wound anyway. Used a strip from her own dress, the only clean part left, and dabbed away the yellow fluid while Kael clenched his jaw and made no sound. That scared her more than if he'd screamed. You need medicine, she said when she was done. Medicine needs money. Money needs a town. Towns need people who aren't running from both sides. There has to be something. There is. He closed his eyes. Leave me here. Keep going. Follow the river south until you hit the old trade road. Someone will help you. And you. Doesn't matter. It matters to me. He opened his eyes then. Looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Why? She didn't have an answer. Not one she could say out loud. That night, she slept curled against the haystack, close enough to feel his heat, far enough to give him space. The wind howled outside. The barn creaked and groaned like it might collapse at any moment. She slept anyway, too tired not to. She woke to voices. Kael was talking in his sleep. Mumbling, really. Words she couldn't quite catch at first. She sat up, pulled the hay from her hair, leaned closer. "Don't let her grow up alone," he whispered. Promise me, Myra." Myra. The name hit Elara like a slap. A woman's name. A child's name. Someone he loved. Someone he was trying to get back to. She sat there in the dark, watching this man she'd been running with for 17 days. This man she'd started to trust, started to maybe even care about, and realized she knew nothing about him. Nothing real. Nothing that mattered. All this time, she'd thought they were in this together. Two people thrown into the same nightmare, surviving together, maybe even becoming something like friends. But he wasn't here because of her. He wasn't here because of some shared fate or destiny or whatever story she'd been telling herself to keep going. He was here because he was trying to get home to someone else. And then Elara realized her hope that they were building something new together was a lie. The truth hit so hard she felt it in her chest, a physical pain like something breaking. She wasn't his companion. She wasn't his partner. She was just another person he was trying to save because that's who he was, the kind of person who saves people even when he's dying, even when he should be saving himself. The night stretched on forever. She didn't sleep again. Just sat there, watching the first light creep through the cracks in the barn walls, listening to his breathing get shallower and shallower, feeling the cold seep into her bones. When morning came, she made a choice. She stood up, brushed the hay off her dress, looked down at him one last time, at the grey skin and the swollen leg and the face that had started to look familiar, started to look like something she might miss. Then she walked out of the barn. Not because she wanted to. Because staying meant watching him die, and leaving meant maybe, possibly, finding a way to save him. The village was 5 miles east. She remembered seeing smoke from its chimneys when they'd crossed the ridge yesterday. 5 miles. There and back. 10 miles total. On a good day, she could do it in 3 hours. This was not a good day. She walked, one foot in front of the other, through frozen grass that sliced her feet, past trees that watched her like strangers, up hills that stole her breath and left her gasping. She walked because stopping meant he died. She walked because somewhere in the last 17 days, without noticing when or how, he'd stopped being the enemy and started being someone worth saving. The village was smaller than she'd hoped. Maybe 20 houses, a blacksmith, a well in the center, and soldiers. Iron Empire soldiers, walking the streets like they owned them. Because they did. Because they owned everything now. Elara hid behind a shed and watched. Waited. Thought. If she walked in there, they'd catch her. They'd ask questions. They'd figure out who she was. And then what? Prison. Execution. Something worse. If she didn't walk in there, Kael died. Simple as that. No medicine, no fever breaking, no miracle. Just a boy in a barn, 23 years old, dying alone because she was too scared to take a risk. She thought about Myra. Whoever she was. Wife, sister, daughter, didn't matter. Someone was waiting for him. Someone who didn't know he was lying in a barn with his leg turning black. Someone who'd spend the rest of their life wondering what happened. Elara stepped out from behind the shed. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her temples. Her hand shook. Her feet kept moving anyway, one after the other, toward the soldiers, toward the danger, toward whatever came next. The first one spotted her when she was 20 feet away. He said something to the others. They turned, looked at her. This girl in a ruined dress with bare feet and wild eyes and dirt in her hair. "Please," she said. Her voice came out cracked, barely there. "I need help." The soldier stepped forward. His hand rested on his sword. "Who are you?" She opened her mouth to lie, closed it, opened it again. What came out surprised everyone, including her. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't running away. It's walking straight toward the danger because someone you love is on the other side. Even if they don't love you back. Even if they never will. Even if their heart belongs to someone whose name you only know because they whispered it in their sleep. The soldier's name was Darren. Elara learned that later. At the moment, he was just a pair of eyes looking at her like she was something he'd scraped off his boot. "Who are you?" he asked again. Elara's mind raced. She could tell the truth and be dead in an hour. She could lie and hope they believed her. Or she could do something else. Something she'd never tried before. She started crying. Not fake crying. Real crying. The kind that comes from 17 days of hunger and fear and watching someone you might care about slip away. The tears were real. The shaking was real. The way her voice broke when she spoke, that was real too. "My husband," she said. "He's sick. Dying. We ran from the fighting, from the castle. We didn't know where to go. We just ran. And now he's in a barn and his leg is black and I don't know what to do." Darren's face changed. Just slightly. The hard edges softened maybe half a degree. "Where's this barn?" "East of here. 5 miles. Please. I'll do anything. I just need medicine. Something for fever. Please." Another soldier stepped forward. Older than Darren. Grey in his beard. Eyes that had seen too much. "Why should we help you? You could be anyone. You could be the enemy." "I am the enemy." Elara met his eyes. "But I'm also just a girl whose husband is dying. He's not a soldier. He's not a fighter. He's just a man who got caught in something that isn't his fault. Like me. Like probably you, once." Something flickered in the older man's face. A memory. A moment. A ghost. He turned to Darren. "Get the medic. And some bread. And those blankets from the supply cart." "Sir." "Do it. Now." Darren ran off. The older man looked at Elara, really looked at her, the way you look at someone when you're trying to decide if they're telling the truth. "My name's Thomas," he said. 20 years ago, I was on the other side of a war. Lost everything. Wife. Kids. Home. Ended up here because the Iron Empire gave me a chance to start over." He paused. "You remind me of her. My wife. The way you showed up here with nothing but fear and hope and the willingness to do whatever it takes." Elara didn't know what to say. So she said nothing. 20 minutes later, she was walking back to the barn with bread in her stomach, blankets under her arm, and a small leather pouch of medicine in her pocket. The medic had shown her how to use it. Boil water. Clean the wound again. Apply the paste. Change the bandage every few hours. If the fever broke in 2 days, he'd live. If not, she didn't think about the not. The walk back felt shorter. Maybe because she wasn't alone. Thomas walked with her, and 2 other soldiers, Darren and a quiet one named Paul. They didn't talk much. Just walked, eyes scanning the trees, hands never far from their weapons. Elara's heart pounded the whole way. Not from fear this time. From hope. From the possibility that she might actually make it back in time. The barn appeared ahead, grey and sagging and beautiful. She ran the last 100 yards, burst through the door, crossed to the haystack in seconds. Kael was still there. Still breathing. Still grey. Still alive. She dropped to her knees beside him, pulled out the pouch, started working. Boiled water over a fire Thomas built. Cleaned the wound while Kael moaned and thrashed. Applied the paste. Wrapped it in clean bandages from the supply cart. Talked to him the whole time. Nonsense words. Anything to let him know he wasn't alone. "You're going to be okay," she said. "I went to the village. I found help. There are soldiers here, but they're good ones. They helped me. They gave me medicine. You're going to be okay. You have to be okay. Myra is waiting for you." His eyes fluttered open at the name. Just for a second. Just long enough to see her face. "Elara," he whispered. And then he was out again. She sat there for a long time, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall. Thomas sat by the door, keeping watch. The others were outside, checking the perimeter. The barn felt almost peaceful, almost safe. The fever broke the next morning. Elara woke to Kael's hand squeezing hers. She looked up, blinked sleep from her eyes, saw him watching her. His face was still pale, but the grey was gone. His eyes were clear. "You came back," he said. "Of course I came back. I told you to leave me." "I know." "Why?" She could have told him the truth. Could have said, "Because I couldn't let you die." Could have said, "Because somewhere along the way you stopped being the enemy and started being someone I need in my life." Could have said, "Because the thought of walking away and never seeing you again hurt more than walking into that village full of soldiers." She didn't say any of that. "Because someone has to make sure you don't do anything stupid," she said instead. He smiled. Actually smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, made her heart do something strange and fluttery that she chose to ignore. "We need to move," Thomas said from the doorway. "Patrols coming. Iron Empire regulars, not like us. They won't ask questions before they act." Kael tried to stand. Fell back. Tried again. Elara caught him, wrapped his arm around her shoulder, took his weight. "Where?" she asked. "North. There's a place. People who help runaways from both sides. My wife's sister runs it. Safe ground." Kael looked at Thomas. "Why are you helping us?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A ring. Simple silver band, worn smooth by years of wear. My wife's ring. I kept it even after I lost everything. Because some things matter more than which flag you fight under. He looked at Elara. She reminded me of that. They moved out within the hour. Slow going, Kael leaning heavy on Elara, stopping every few minutes to rest. Thomas scouted ahead. Darren and Pole brought up the rear. The forest closed around them, bare winter branches reaching up like fingers. By nightfall, they reached the place. A cabin, larger than it looked from outside, smoke rising from a chimney. Light in the windows. The smell of cooking food. A woman met them at the door. Middle-aged, grey streaking her dark hair, eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Thomas first, then at Elara, then at Kael. "This is her?" she asked Thomas. "The one you sent word about?" Thomas nodded. The woman stepped aside. "Come in. All of you. There's stew. And beds. And no questions until you've eaten." Elara helped Kael inside. The warmth hit her like a wave, made her eyes water. The stew smelled like heaven. She sat Kael down by the fire, accepted a bowl, ate so fast she burned her tongue and didn't care. For the first time in weeks, she felt almost human. Later that night, after Kael had been checked by the cabin's healer and declared on the road to recovery, Elara sat by the window and looked out at the dark. Thomas joined her. "What happens now?" she asked. "That's up to you. You can stay here. Build a life. Or you can keep running. Or you can fight." "Fight how? I'm nobody. Just a princess who lost everything." Thomas smiled. "That's exactly why you can fight. You know the castles. You know the families. You know the secret passages and the hidden doors and the names of everyone who ever held power. You're not nobody. You're the most dangerous person in this war." Elara thought about that. About her father's chewed thumbnail. About the treaty with its wet ink. About the lion-headed seal weeping blood-red wax. She thought about Kael, asleep by the fire, alive because she'd refused to give up. And she thought about Myra. Whoever she was. Waiting somewhere for news that might never come. "I need to know," Elara said quietly. "About Myra. Who she is to him." Thomas looked at her with something like pity. Like understanding. Like he'd been exactly where she was now, years ago, and knew how the story went. Ask him, Thomas said, when he's strong enough. But be ready for the answer. Whatever it is. The fire crackled. The wind blew. Somewhere in the dark, soldiers from both sides were hunting and hiding and dying for causes they might not even believe in anymore. And Elara sat by the window, holding on to hope like a lifeline, waiting for morning. Sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. Sometimes the questions we are most afraid to ask lead us exactly where we need to go. Kael would wake in the morning. They would talk. And Elara would finally learn the truth about Myra. Whatever it was, she was ready. She had to be. The study smelled different now. Not like old paper and dust, but like fresh ink and the flowers Elara's daughter had picked that morning and arranged in a blue vase on the windowsill. Spring sunlight streamed through the glass, warm on her face, carrying the sound of birds from the garden below. 20 years. That's how long it had been since she'd last stood in a room like this, watching a treaty get signed. 20 years since her father's chewed thumbnail had told her everything she needed to know about the piece of paper in front of him. The scar on her right hand caught the light as she reached for the quill. Silver white against her skin, running from her wrist to her knuckle. She'd gotten it that night in the tunnel, when she'd fallen against something sharp in the dark and kept running anyway. Every time she looked at it, she remembered. The smoke. The fear. The feeling of Kael's hand over her mouth, keeping her quiet, keeping her alive. She touched the scar now, the way she always did before signing anything important. A habit. A reminder. A promise. The treaty on the table before her was different from that other one, the one that had started everything. This one wasn't about ending a war. That war had ended 15 years ago, when the old empires finally collapsed under their own weight. This treaty was about something else. Something better. Trade routes. Open borders. Schools that would teach children from both sides of the old conflict. A future that didn't require anyone to bite their nails raw with worry. Elara picked up the quill. Her hand was steady. No tremor. No fear. Just the calm that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're building. She signed her name. Queen Elara of the United Realms. It still felt strange sometimes, that title. Not because she hadn't earned it. She had. But because she still remembered being that girl in the smoky hallway, running from everything she'd ever known. The new seal waited at the bottom of the page. Gold wax this time, warm and bright. The lion's head was still there, but it was different now. Not fierce. Not proud in the old way. Just strong. Peaceful. A lion that had nothing to prove. She pressed it down. The wax held. The treaty was signed. Behind her, a small voice broke the silence. "Mother, can I press it down? Just once." Elara turned. Her daughter Myra stood in the doorway, sunlight haloing her dark hair. She was 7 years old, with Kael's eyes and Elara's stubborn chin, and she held the old lion-headed seal in her small hands. The one from that first treaty. The one that had wept blood-red wax 20 years ago. Elara had kept it. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. As proof that even broken things could find new purpose. "Where did you find that?" Elara asked. "In the big chest. The one in the attic. With all the old papers." Myra held it up. "It's heavy. What is it?" Elara set down her quill and crossed the room. She knelt beside her daughter, eye level, the way her own mother had never done with her. "That belonged to my father. Your grandfather. He used it to sign important documents." "Like the one you just signed." "Like that, yes. But different too." Myra studied the seal, turning it over in her hands. "It has a scratch on it. Right here." She pointed. "Did someone drop it?" Elara touched the scratch. She remembered exactly how it got there. The night the castle fell. The way the seal had skidded across the stone floor when the first cannon hit. The way she'd picked it up later, weeks later, when she'd gone back to see what remained. "Something like that," she said. "But scratches don't matter. What matters is what you do with it. Myra thought about that for a moment. Then she held the seal out to her mother. Can I press the new one? Please. I'll be careful. Elara looked at her daughter. At the earnest face, the hopeful eyes, the small hands already learning to hold on to things that mattered. 20 years ago, she'd been running through smoke, sure that everything was over. 20 years ago, she'd hidden in a dark alcove with a stranger who would become her husband, her partner, her best friend. 20 years ago, she'd learned that the person she thought she was meant to be didn't exist anymore, and that was okay because she could become someone new. 20 years ago, she'd heard a name in the darkness. Myra, whispered by a dying man who was fighting to get home to someone he loved. That someone had been his little sister, orphaned when their parents died in the war's first year. 6 years old and alone in the world, waiting for a brother who might never come back. Kael had made it back. Elara had made sure of that. And when she'd gone with him, when she'd seen that small girl with the big eyes and the fierce grip on her brother's hand, she'd known. This was her family now. These were her people. 3 years later, when Kael asked her to marry him, she'd said yes without hesitation. Not because of politics or treaties or alliances. Because she loved him. Because he loved her. Because Myra needed a mother and Elara needed someone to come home to. The war had ended 5 years after that. Not with a bang. With a whimper. Both sides too exhausted to keep fighting. Both sides too broken to remember why they'd started. Elara had been there when the final terms were negotiated. She'd sat at a table much like this one, across from people who had once been her enemies, and she'd helped them find common ground. Not because she was brilliant or powerful or special. Because she remembered what it felt like to be afraid. Because she remembered what it felt like to run. Because she remembered that the soldier who'd helped her, Thomas, had once been on the other side too. People change. Sides shift. What matters is what you do next. Okay, Elara said now, standing up and taking Myra's hand. Come on. I'll show you how. She led her daughter to the table, lifted her up so she could reach, guided her small hand as she pressed the old seal into the new wax, leaving its mark on the future. Myra giggled with delight. I did it. You did. Elara kissed the top of her head. You did it perfectly. The door opened. Kael walked in, still in his garden clothes, dirt on his hands from the vegetables he'd been planting. He stopped when he saw them, mother and daughter at the table, sunlight painting them gold. Did I miss it? He asked. You missed everything, Myra said. I signed a treaty. Did you now? He came over, lifted Myra into his arms, kissed her cheek. What did you sign away? My secret snack stash. Myra laughed. No, silly. Trade routes. And schools. And, she looked at her mother for help. And 100 years of peace, Elara said quietly. If we are lucky. Kael met her eyes over their daughter's head. 20 years of marriage looked back at her. 20 years of building something together, stone by stone, day by day. 20 years of choosing each other over and over again. Lucky, he said. We are the luckiest people I know. Outside, the garden bloomed. Inside, the wax cooled and hardened on the treaty, gold and beautiful and whole. The lion-headed seal sat on the table where Myra had left it, its old scratch catching the light, transformed from a symbol of fear into something else entirely. A paperweight, maybe. A memory. A reminder that even the heaviest things can find new purpose. Elara picked it up later, after Myra had run off to play and Kael had gone back to his vegetables. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its weight, tracing its scratch with her thumb. 20 years ago, this seal had wept blood-red wax while her father bit his nails and pretended everything was fine. 20 years ago, she'd been a girl in a pretty dress, watching her world end. Now she was a queen. A mother. A wife. A woman who had learned that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave enough to do what needs doing. She set the seal down on the windowsill, next to the blue vase of flowers. The sun caught it, made it glow. Somewhere in the garden, Myra laughed at something her father said. Elara smiled. And then she went to join them. The scar on her hand would never fade completely. She didn't want it to. Every time she saw it, she remembered. The smoke. The fear. The running. The boy in the barn with the grey skin and the whispered name. The village full of soldiers and the choice that changed everything. She remembered. But she also remembered this. Spring sunlight. Her daughter's laughter. Her husband's hand in hers. A future built not on treaties and seals and promises written in ink, but on something stronger. Love, it turns out, doesn't just choose between war and peace. It builds something new entirely. Something that lasts.